What's up everyone, my name is MadiKuma, and today in NOQQYSC, I'm here to bring you a new guide full of hints and tips. Now this guide is one that I'm super excited about, and since there's so much to say, I'm going to be cutting it into two parts. With this being the first part, there'll be a link to part 2 in the description below, as well as on screen at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Now, today's guide is on one of my personal favourite weapons, the 52 gal itself. But despite what people may think at first glance, the regular or vanilla 52 gal and the 52 gal deco can have two very varying playstyles. So I'm here to tell you about both. This part is going to be covering the base weapon itself and its core mechanics, as well as the sub and special of the regular 52 gal. Over on part 2 we'll be looking at the sub and special of the deco and how its playstyle can differ. And just remember, what I say isn't gospel. Although I'm a very regular player of Splatoon, everybody has their own experiences and opinions when it comes to weapons. So let me know your experiences in the comments below, including any tips for new users of the weapon. Now let's splat. The 52 gal is a very aggressive weapon that's really meant to be on the front lines, so you do need to be prepared to engage with the enemy and initiate a push for your team, so it's something you may want to consider before picking it up. The focus point of this weapon is possibly also the reason it got its name, as the 52 gal has a base damage of, well, 52, making it a 2-hit KO for anyone not wearing any defense up gear. However, keep in mind, even an opponent wearing one main of defense up gear will reduce the damage, making it a 3-hit KO. For this reason, it's a good idea to keep some damage up in your gear list, and take advantage of the 2-hit KO. Personally, I run 1 damage up main and 3 damage up subs. This allows me to splat all enemies in 2 hits unless they're wearing over 3 defense up mains. It's worth keeping an eye out for enemy inklings using defense up during battles, so you know that they'll need the extra hit. But just like any high power weapon, there's always a drawback. For the 52 gal, it's the firing speed. For those used to splatter shots and those like it, the 52 gal probably feels a little slow to fire, but it's certainly not the slowest by any means, and definitely not enough to set it back. Its other point to mention is that it requires quite a bit of accuracy. It's important to remember these two things in battle. Having a low fire rate and need for high accuracy means that you need to make each shot count. Or in other words, land your 2 shots before an enemy has a chance to land theirs. But how can you do this? Movement. I'll cover a few different ways you can use movement to your advantage with this weapon. This weapon has a medium range, so the short range weapons will fall to its mercy, so long as you keep your distance from them. Remember, when engaging with weapons like rollers and lunar blasters with short but powerful range, keep on the move, backing away from them as you fire at them, to keep yourself out of the danger zone. As far as long range weapons such as dual squelchers and splattershot pros, sneaking up on their side or back is your best bet, getting close enough to start fire on them before they spot you. But how about some more specific techniques? For this weapon, when you're in a situation where you and an enemy inkling are firing at each other, I believe it's best to move in between every 3 shots or so. It only takes 2 shots to KO an opponent, so if you haven't splattered them after a few shots, your best bet is to maneuver around them and adjust your aim. Because of the slow fire rate, missing more than a few shots gives your enemies a lot of time to get the splat on you. So readjusting your position means the enemy inkling will have to readjust their aim too. Plus, submerging in your ink restores your health. Don't be afraid to make a temporary retreat and find a better approach. If you can keep your aim steady while hopping, it can be a valid option while engaging with enemies too. But it may be something you need to practice with, due to the accuracy needed with the 52 gal. If this is something that you're interested in, I'd advise practicing with the dummies in the training yard to keep your aim steady mid-jump. And lastly, as far as movement while firing goes, circular strafing can be a huge help. It's not something I've fully mastered myself, but circling around your enemy in a counterclockwise direction or focusing your shots on them can make it hard for your enemy to focus and land hits on you. It can be a little confusing to explain, but it's not something new as far as shooters are concerned. I'll leave a link in the description for those who want to learn more about this technique. Also note that having run speed up can help a lot with this technique, and it's definitely one I'd advise practicing with the dummies in the training yard first. Overall, just like any weapon with a low fire rate, you want to keep on the move. Whether it be via strafing, retreating and reapproaching, hopping, or a mixture of them all, find a style that suits you and keep practicing your accuracy with it. And don't worry, I'm not forgetting about the regular 52's handy sub weapon. is when you have a splash wall deployed, you can take a little more time with your aim and take those extra hits to your wall before you're forced to move. But even for those wanting to use the regular 52 gal, knowing how to survive without a splash wall is important, as you won't always have one ready. Speaking of splash walls, how about those subs and specials? Now I've noted before that I think subs and specials need their own guides respectively to get the most out of them, but I'll try to give a pretty good overview of the two possible combinations anyway, since they change up the playstyles quite a bit. So up first we're talking about the vanilla build, or the regular 52 gal, unlocked pretty early on at level 5 with the splash wall sub and killer whale special. There's no question that splash walls are pretty awesome. They can save you from so many situations. They're pretty hefty on your ink tank, but they provide cover from enemy fire for a short period of time or until the wall is broken down by enemy fire. But remember, the splash wall doesn't really work as a panic button. As tempting as it can be to throw out a splash wall as someone begins to fire at you, there are actually a few frames of animation of your inkling throwing down the splash wall before its protection comes into effect. If the enemy is already close enough to be firing at you, chances are they'll splat you before your splash wall is up. So in that scenario, it'd be best to retreat a little to add some distance between you and the enemy before setting one up. But for the most part, you'll want to send out a splash wall before engaging with enemies, making sure that you stay in control. Also, it's worth noting that inklings can easily swim around a splash wall in open areas to try flank you. So if you spot someone doing this, swim underneath your splash wall and engage them from the opposite side, staying protected. It's also important to note that splash walls can be taken out in one hit by both charges or a bomb being thrown at it, so it's not always going to stay up for long. Splash walls work pretty well in rank too, with special ways you can use them in each mode. In tower control, a splash wall thrown just right can land onto the tower and provide much needed cover for the inklings riding the tower. Due to the way the splash wall bounces, it can be pretty tricky to pull off and requires some pretty precise timing. But in the description below you'll find a link to a video dedicated to showing different spots that can help with getting your splash walls to land on the tower, so I'd recommend checking it out and either recon some maps or enter private battles to test out and practice the timing. In splat zones they're great for general protection, but also setting them up in spots which really hinders opponents from inking a zone. Blocking them for those few moments that the splash wall is up can be enough to either take over a zone or make a longer push. They're best worked alongside your team inking the zone though, as by the time you put up a wall you won't have much ink left in your tank for inking. This next point I'll be talking about in terms of Rainmaker, but it's great in all modes. It just made the most impact on me during Rainmaker. This is blocking off pathways. Any pathway that's roughly 2 inklings wide should be able to be completely blocked off by a splash wall. You'd be surprised how many maps have spots like this. The Arowana Mall corridor, the Walleye Warehouse corridor, the Moray Towers ramps, and very notably Port Mackerel, which has splash wall sized corridors all over. Its use is most notable in Rainmaker simply because it can block a Rainmaker's path and completely shield you from the Rainmaker shot while attempting to get the splat on it. The splash wall won't last long against the Rainmaker, but often long enough to get the KO on them. This leads me into talking about the special, the Killer Whale. Like the splash wall, it can be used to block pathways and zone out opponents. On a map like Port Mackerel, coordinating multiple killer whales down each of the corridors can be a crazy experience if you can get a team coordinating enough. But even blocking one with a splash wall and another with a killer whale can leave the opponents pretty stuck and pretty frantic, especially to a Rainmaker trying to make a push. The whale is perfect for tight spots that will lock your opponent in and award you with the splat, but they can also give some cover to an allied tower or Rainmaker. Overall, the sub and special work well together. They have similar features and can work towards blocking opponents, really trapping them, and setting them up to be splat. The vanilla or regular build has a good balance of defense and attack while remaining an aggressive weapon. It focuses around blocking opponents' pathways and zoning them into a position where you can best get the splat on them. But how about its deco counterpart? Click here for part 2, which covers the 52 gal decos, subs and specials, and a different way of playing the gal altogether. It's my personal favourite. Could it be yours too? Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the regular 52 gal, and how you like to play it. If you think I've left anything out, leave a comment, and I'll be sure to check it out. Happy splatting everyone!